A billionaire French man is near signing the deal of a mega project, not knowing he is going into a trap. The air inside the conference room was unnaturally still, heavy with polished silence. On the long marble table, the $100 million contract sat waiting, its crisp pages catching the light. Etienne Moreau leaned forward slightly, his cufflinks flashing. "So, James," he said in a measured French accent, "we are finally here, after 3 months of negotiations." Across from him, James Williams smiled, the kind of smooth, confident smile that belonged to a man used to winning. "3 months too long if you ask me," he replied, voice steady, amused. "But good things take time and great things take patience. This deal, Etienne, is going to make history." Etienne's assistant, Amara Blake, stood slightly behind him, tablet in hand, her dark eyes following every movement. She was calm, poised, yet there was a faint unease beneath her composure. She had spent weeks reviewing the documents, the projections, the supposed partnership terms. Everything looked perfect. Almost too perfect, Etienne nodded thoughtfully. "I hope you are right," he said. "France will soon see an alliance between Moreau Industries and William Dynamics. We will create the future of smart energy." James raised his glass of sparkling water. "To the future." The clink of glass was soft, almost ceremonial. Amara glanced at the digital clock on the wall. 10:47 a.m. The signing was scheduled for 11. Security had been cleared. Photographers were waiting outside, and a press release was already drafted. Everything was moving in clockwork precision. Yet something in her gut twisted, something she couldn't shake off since last night when she'd been rechecking the acquisition ledger. Etienne leaned back. "Before we proceed," he said, "I would like to go over the final clause one more time, the ownership transition on the research division. I want to make sure it is a 50-50 split as we agreed." James nodded, brushing invisible lint from his navy suit. "Of course. Everything's as we finalized it. Our lawyers went through the clause this morning." Amara's pen paused above her tablet. She'd read that clause. She remembered something strange, a single line that didn't match the previous drafts. Something about subsidiary reallocation upon merger, but she couldn't confirm it. The new version had been sent through encrypted channels, accessible only to Etienne's direct terminal. James's assistant, a tall blonde named Claire, placed a glossy folder before her boss. "Final version, sir," she said softly. Etienne adjusted his glasses and flipped the first page. The pages rustled like whispers of paper secrets. "You know, James," he said, smiling faintly, "you remind me of myself 10 years ago. Confident, hungry, sure of your path." James chuckled. "And now?" "Now," Etienne said, signing the first initial line, "I am wise enough to know hunger can blind a man." Amara's gaze flicked between them, mentor and mirror, predator and prey. She wasn't sure who was which. James's phone buzzed once. He glanced down, frowned slightly, then turned the device face down. "Sorry, minor distraction. Let's continue." Etienne kept reading, occasionally murmuring something in French under his breath. Amara could see his hand trembling slightly, not from doubt, but from adrenaline. This deal meant everything to him. It was the gateway for his expansion into the U.S. market. "Would you like me to confirm the stock transfer schedule, sir?" Amara asked gently. Etienne looked back, smiling warmly. "Yes, Amara, go ahead." She tapped her tablet. "As per the document version received on Monday, Moreau Industries' 30% stake will transfer immediately upon signing, with the remaining 20% following after the initial quarter performance report." James's brow twitched, barely noticeable. Etienne didn't catch it. "Bon, then we are aligned." Amara hesitated, something in her chest tightening. "Sir, may I ask, did you verify if the clause structure remained the same after yesterday's revision?" Etienne blinked. "Yesterday's revision?" James intervened smoothly. "Oh, that was just a formatting correction, Miss Blake. Legalese cleanup." "Nothing structural?" Amara nodded politely, but inside her instincts flared. Formatting changes didn't require new encryption, nor did they change document hash signatures. Yet this one had. Etienne turned another page. "James, your company's valuation jumped this quarter." "You must be proud?" James smiled, leaning back. We had a few quiet investors step in. Strategic partnerships, government contracts, that sort of thing. Quiet investors? Etienne raised an eyebrow. Yes, sir, James replied. Names you wouldn't see on paper. But you'll be glad they're involved. They've got reach, Etienne chuckled softly. I always prefer to know who I'm sharing my bed with, even in business. Amara's eyes flicked toward James. For a fleeting second, she saw something cold flash behind his smile. Not annoyance, but calculation. Etienne set down the pen. Still, you have delivered everything promised. I'm satisfied. James's smile widened. Then let's sign history, my friend. Etienne reached for the Mont Blanc pen again. His hand hovered over the signature line. Amara's pulse quickened. The pages were real. The numbers were clean. But the clause, the reallocation, she remembered the legal note referencing VTech Holdings, a dormant firm under William Dynamics. A firm once flagged for offshore laundering. Etienne's pen touched paper. Sir? Amara said softly. He paused, mid-stroke. Oui? Could I review the digital version one last time? James's voice hardened slightly. Miss Blake, I assure you our legal teams... Etienne held up a hand. No, she is thorough. It's why I pay her more than most lawyers. Amara moved closer, tablet in hand. Thank you, sir. Just a moment. She opened the encrypted drive, fingers gliding over the interface. Her screen loaded the metadata. File hash mismatch confirmed. Her throat tightened. Sir, she said, glancing up slowly, this version isn't the same as the one we approved. James's eyes narrowed. Excuse me? Etienne frowned. What do you mean? Amara turned the tablet toward him. See this? The contract ID is different. The timestamp was modified last night, 2:37 a.m., and there's an unverified signature embedded here under the name VTech Holdings. James leaned forward, his tone smooth but firm. It's a technical reference, a holding company used for regional compliance. Legal stuff. Not your concern, Etienne studied the screen. But you never mentioned this company before. Because it's procedural. Amara's eyes met Etienne's. Sir, this procedural step gives full asset control of your European energy patents to VTech Holdings, which, according to registry, is 100% owned by William Dynamics. A long silence. Etienne's pen dropped. The sound echoed. James exhaled through his nose, smile fading slightly. Etienne, don't let paranoia ruin what we've built. These are just structural details for tax efficiency. Amara's tone was calm, almost too calm. With all due respect, Mr. William, this clause transfers intellectual property, not taxes. Etienne's voice dropped, almost a whisper. Is this true? James didn't answer immediately. He just stared, calculating. Etienne, he said finally, we're businessmen. You and I both know deals aren't clean without complexity. You get your expansion, I get the framework. That's how it works. Etienne stood slowly. His expression was unreadable, cold, composed. I see. Amara could feel his anger simmer beneath the surface, restrained by years of diplomacy. You tried to outsmart me, Etienne said quietly. James leaned forward. No, Etienne. I tried to make sure we both win. Don't turn this into something it's not. Etienne's smile was thin and sharp. You Americans, you always call it a win when you are the only one holding the pen. The room went still again. Outside, faint murmurs of photographers and PR teams echoed through the hall. Etienne turned to Amara. Delete the file from my system, immediately. She nodded. Yes, sir. James stood abruptly. Etienne, you're making a mistake. You walk out now and you lose the entire project. Every investor watching this deal will pull back. Etienne fixed him with an icy stare. Better to lose money than my integrity, James smirked. Integrity doesn't keep empires running. Etienne stepped closer, his voice lowering. No, James, but it exposes those who build theirs on lies. Amara quietly gathered the folders, sliding them into the briefcase. Her hands were steady now, the doubt gone. Etienne reached for his coat. I think our meeting is over. But as they turned to leave, James's phone buzzed again. He looked down. and this time couldn't hide the flicker of alarm that crossed his face. Amara noticed it instantly. Etienne stopped. "Something wrong?" James slipped the phone into his pocket, forcing a smile. "No, nothing important." But his eyes told another story, one of panic and hidden stakes. As Etienne and Amara walked toward the door, the CEO called out, voice hardening, "You don't understand what you're walking away from, Etienne. This deal was bigger than you think." Etienne turned slightly. "Then perhaps, James, I should ask myself why." The elevator doors opened, reflecting their silhouettes against the glass. Amara pressed the button, but her mind was racing. The look on James's face, the message he'd received, it wasn't about losing a deal. It was fear, and fear, in her experience, always meant there was still more hidden beneath the surface. As the doors slid shut, Etienne exhaled deeply. "You saved me, Amara," he said quietly. She shook her head. "Not yet, sir. I think we just opened the first page of something much bigger." The elevator descended in silence. Outside, high above the city, the contract lay abandoned on the marble table, unsigned, untouched, but not forgotten, because the trap was still set. They just refused to walk into it. And somewhere in the dark layers of William dynamics, someone had already realized their plan had failed. The elevator hummed softly as it descended through the gleaming tower. Etienne Moreau stood silent, his reflection fractured across the mirrored walls, a billionaire undone not by failure, but betrayal, narrowly escaped. Beside him, Amara Blake's composure was still, but her thoughts moved fast, connecting threads invisible to anyone else. When the doors opened into the marble lobby, the flash of cameras hit them instantly. Dozens of reporters and photographers lined the entryway, waiting for the official signing. Etienne raised a hand to shield his eyes, forcing a neutral smile. "Mr. Moreau, did the deal go through?" "Etienne." "Is William Dynamics merging with Moreau Industries?" He didn't respond. He simply walked forward, Amara close behind, through the wall of noise and questions. Once inside the waiting limousine, the doors sealed them into muffled quiet. Etienne exhaled deeply, removing his tie. "Mon Dieu," he muttered. "That man nearly sold me my own company." Amara nodded, scanning her tablet. "Sir, I've already disconnected all shared cloud links. No data leak from our side." Etienne rubbed his temple. "Thank you. Without you, I would be ruined before lunch. You hired me to protect your interests," she said. "Sometimes that means protecting you from yourself." He chuckled softly despite the tension. "Touché." The car started moving through the city streets. Etienne's gaze turned distant. "You saw the way he reacted. The phone call, the fear. That was not the face of a man simply losing a deal." Amara looked up. "No, sir. It was the face of someone realizing his plan was just exposed." Etienne frowned. "But how deep does it go? What did he truly want?" Amara hesitated. "I think it's time we find out." Etienne studied her for a moment. "You sound as if you already have a theory." Amara looked out the window, watching the skyscrapers slide by. "Sir, when I checked that contract's metadata, the signature chain included a government domain tag. Not U.S. government, European," Etienne's eyes narrowed. "European?" "Yes, sir. And the encryption key prefix belongs to an entity registered in Monaco. That's where William Dynamics' shadow investors are rumored to operate." Etienne's tone hardened. "And who are these shadow investors?" She tapped her screen. "Names are masked, but there's a trace signature linked to Arcton Group." Etienne froze. His expression changed. Disbelief, then anger. "Impossible. You know them?" He leaned back, voice low. "Arcton Group was my competitor in the 1990s. Ruthless. They specialize in acquisition traps, buying patents through proxy companies. They nearly destroyed my father's business before I took over." "Then they've been waiting," Amara said softly. "And James William was their new face." Etienne's jaw tightened. "We must confirm this," Amara nodded. "I can dig. But, sir, if they've used encrypted shells, it won't be easy. We'll need access to William Dynamics' internal server, or at least someone inside." Etienne looked at her curiously. "And how do you propose we get that?" Amara closed her tablet slowly. By going back? Etienne raised an eyebrow. Back? Yes, sir. We walk right into their lion's den. An hour later, the Frenchman's limousine pulled into an underground parking garage beneath William Tower. The media had dispersed. After being told the signing ceremony was postponed, the PR team upstairs still believed everything was on schedule. Etienne adjusted his suit. Are you sure about this? Amara nodded. We have one advantage. William doesn't yet know we suspect more than the contract. If we play this right, he might reveal what he's hiding. They stepped into the executive elevator, silent except for the faint buzz of fluorescent light. When the doors opened onto the top floor, Claire, William's assistant, stood at the reception desk, startled. Mr. Moreau? Ms. Blake, I thought the signing was over. Etienne smiled politely. We realized there were some final numbers to confirm. Claire hesitated, then nodded quickly. Of course, sir, Mr. William is still in the boardroom. Etienne's voice was calm. Perfect. They entered the same room. Sunlight flooding across the polished table, untouched glasses still half full. James William stood by the window, phone to his ear, voice low and urgent. When he noticed them, his expression shifted from surprise to measured control. Etienne, he said, pocketing the phone. Didn't expect to see you back? Etienne smiled thinly. Neither did I. But something told me we weren't finished. James glanced briefly at Amara, then back to Etienne. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Perhaps, Etienne replied. Or perhaps you are not telling me everything. James sighed. You're chasing shadows. Look, Etienne, I respect you. I didn't want to complicate this, but yes, there are partners involved in this deal. Names that prefer to stay anonymous. Arcton Group? Etienne said quietly. James froze. The silence that followed was louder than shouting. Amara's pulse quickened. James slowly turned. Where did you hear that name? Etienne stepped closer. You think I would walk into a $100 million deal without knowing my enemy? James exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. You don't understand, Etienne. This isn't what you think. Arcton isn't just a partner. They're the reason this deal exists at all. They funded your expansion 3 years ago under another name. They've had you in their web for longer than you realize. Etienne stiffened. You lie. James shook his head. Check your funding portfolio. The shell company Keltrax Holdings? That's them. They've owned 30% of your R&D division since 2022. Amara frowned. That's not possible. I audited those records myself. James looked at her. Then you missed something. Or maybe someone wanted you to. Etienne's voice cracked slightly. Mon Dieu. James approached the table, lowering his voice. Etienne, they don't just want your company. They want control of Europe's renewable grid. The tech you're developing could make them untouchable. Etienne stared at him. And you are what, their messenger? James's jaw tightened. Their intermediary. I didn't have a choice. You think I'd risk my reputation if they didn't have leverage over me? Amara studied his face. There was desperation in his eyes now, the kind that didn't come from greed but from fear. Etienne's tone was razor sharp. What leverage? James hesitated. They've got data on me. Old projects, questionable funding. They own half my board through silent shares. If I didn't play along, they'd dismantle everything I built. Amara took a small step forward. So you tried to trap someone else to free yourself. James didn't answer. Etienne's hand slammed against the table, startling even himself. You think I would let men like that steal what I built? My father fought them, and now they use cowards like you to finish the job. James's voice rose. You think you can fight them? They control banks, governments, entire energy grids. This isn't just business anymore. It's ownership of the future. Amara's phone buzzed softly. She glanced down, an encrypted message from an unknown source. It read, Stop digging. You don't know who you're crossing. Her heart skipped. She looked up, eyes meeting Etienne's. Sir, she said, voice low. They're already watching us. James looked panicked. You need to leave, both of you. If they know you're here, it's already too late. Etienne straightened. I will not run. James leaned closer. Then you'd better prepare for a war. Etienne's expression hardened. Then war is what they will get. Amara closed her tablet. Sir, if Arcton's embedded inside both companies, we need proof. Something we can expose. James laughed bitterly. Proof. They don't leave proof. Every document you saw today was sanitized through 5 offshore entities. Not every document, Amara murmured. They both looked at her. She turned the tablet around. On the screen, a set of backup files glowed faintly, versions automatically stored on Etienne's private cloud before encryption. She had downloaded them out of habit before the signing. James blinked. You kept shadow copies? Yes, Amara said simply. Digital paranoia saves lives. Etienne smiled faintly. Sometimes, Amara, you are more dangerous than any investor. James rubbed his temples. If you go public with that, you'll be hunted. You understand? Arcton doesn't send lawyers. They send cleaners. Etienne's voice was cold. Then perhaps it is time the world knows who they really are. The intercom crackled suddenly, Claire's voice trembling through it. Mr. William, there are men here asking for you. They say they're from corporate security, but I don't recognize them. James's face drained of color. Damn it! Amara's eyes widened. Sir, we need to move. Etienne grabbed the briefcase. Not without those files. I have them all backed up, she said. Let's go. The door opened abruptly. 2 men in black suits stepped in, silent, eyes like mirrors. Mr. William, one said calmly. You're needed downstairs. James tried to smile, but his voice cracked. Tell them I'll be right there. The man didn't move. Now, sir. Etienne exchanged a glance with Amara. Then, in one motion, he took her arm. We leave. The guard stepped forward, but James raised a hand quickly. Let them go. The men paused, waiting. Etienne stared at him. Why? James met his gaze, something like regret in his eyes. Because if they stay, they won't walk out. For the first time, Etienne understood. He gave a curt nod. Merci. They left without another word, the tension behind them like a closing trap door. As they reached the elevator, Amara whispered, Sir, he's not our enemy. Etienne glanced at her. No, Amara, but he's the warning. When the doors slid shut, she exhaled shakily. What now? Etienne looked out through the glass as the elevator descended. Now, he said quietly, we find out how deep this rabbit hole goes. Outside, the city gleamed, unaware that a $100 million deal had just uncovered something far more dangerous than corporate deceit. And as they stepped into the waiting car, a black SUV pulled out 2 levels behind them, unmarked, windows tinted. Following at a careful distance, Amara noticed it in the rear mirror. Her hand clenched around her tablet, sir, she said softly. They're not done with us yet. Etienne's eyes hardened. Then neither am I. The city passed by in streaks of chrome and sunlight as Etienne Moreau's limousine sliced through traffic. Inside, the silence was thick, the kind that hums with unspoken dread. Amara sat beside him, her tablet open, scrolling through encrypted archives. Etienne's reflection in the tinted window looked like a man aging a decade by the minute. They followed us from William Tower, Amara said quietly, glancing at the rear camera feed. Same SUV, 2 men inside. Etienne nodded grimly. Then they know we have something they want. Amara's fingers danced across the glass. I'm locking our coordinates. Once we reach your penthouse, I'll transfer the files to a secure offline drive. Etienne turned to her. And after that? She hesitated. After that, we decide whether to hide or strike. Etienne smiled faintly, though his eyes were cold. I am not a man who hides. The car stopped at a private elevator in the underground garage of his hotel. The driver, a loyal employee for years, gave a nervous nod. Monsieur, I'll stay here. Keep watch. Etienne placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Merci, Paul. Be careful. They entered the elevator. The ascent was silent except for the hum of distant traffic. Etienne's penthouse opened into sweeping glass and light. The whole of Manhattan sprawled beneath them like a living map. Yet even amid such luxury, danger lingered like perfume in the air. Amara set her tablet on the table, plugging into a portable decryption module. Sir, I've extracted the metadata. It's worse than we thought. Etienne joined her. Show me. The screen projected a holographic map of corporate entities, lines connecting dozens of names. Arcton Group at the center, its tendrils reaching across continents. These are shell companies, she explained. And this one, Keltrax Holdings, has been channeling funds directly into Moreau Industries for years. They've hidden it through R&D investments, subsidies, even charitable grants. Etienne's jaw clenched. So they have owned me all along. Amara shook her head. Not you, your name. They needed your legitimacy to mask their control. Etienne sank into a chair. I built this empire to be independent. To prove I could stand on my own after what they did to my father. Amara turned off the projection. Sir, I think it's time you tell me what really happened back then. He exhaled slowly. My father, Jean Moreau, founded Moreau Energy in 1982. He was brilliant but naive. Arcton Group approached him under a different name, a partnership proposal promising global expansion. Within 3 years, they siphoned his patents, bankrupted his firm, and left him ruined. He died believing he'd failed. Amara's voice softened. And you rebuilt from the ashes. Etienne nodded. I swore never to trust anyone again. Not investors, not governments. And now? He laughed bitterly. History repeats itself. Amara looked at him thoughtfully. Maybe not this time. He met her eyes. You believe we can stop them? I believe we can expose them, she said. But first we need proof that ties Arcton directly to the fraud. The backup files are a start, but they'll argue fabrication unless we have more. Etienne frowned. And how do we get that? Amara hesitated before answering. James William might have it. Etienne's gaze darkened. He would never cooperate. Maybe not willingly, she said, but he's desperate. If Arcton's turning on him, he's a liability. He'll need protection, and that gives us leverage. Etienne leaned back, considering her words. You think he will talk? Amara's eyes flicked to the window, where the skyline shimmered under the afternoon sun. If he believes it's the only way to survive. The elevator chime startled them. Etienne's security code flashed red. Unauthorized access. Amara's head snapped up. Someone's coming up. Etienne rose instantly. Stay behind me. The elevator doors opened slowly. A tall man stepped out, dressed in black, eyes cold. He wasn't one of Etienne's guards. Who are you? Etienne demanded. The man didn't answer. Instead, he tossed a small black envelope onto the marble floor. Mr. Moreau, Miss Blake, you've been warned. Before Etienne could respond, the man stepped back into the elevator and vanished as the doors closed again. Amara knelt, picking up the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, an image of Etienne's Paris villa. Beneath it, in neat handwriting, we know where it began. Don't make us end it the same way. Etienne's hands trembled as he read it. They've been to my home. Amara looked at him. Sir, this isn't just business anymore. It's personal. Etienne's voice hardened. Then they will regret making it so. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. We need to think strategically. If we go to the authorities, they'll bury the case. Arcton owns half of them. Etienne looked out the window. Then we find someone who can't be bought. Amara hesitated, then said quietly, There might be one person. He turned. Who? She swallowed. My mother, Etienne blinked. Your mother? Yes. She works in global financial oversight. She was one of the auditors who investigated Arcton 15 years ago before the case disappeared. She's been in hiding ever since. Etienne stared at her. You never mentioned this. Because I thought she was dead, Amara said softly. Until last year, when she sent me an encrypted letter, a warning to never trust corporate alliances. I didn't understand then. Now I do, Etienne's voice dropped. She knew. Amara nodded. She's been fighting them for decades. If she's still alive, she'll have evidence. Etienne walked toward the window, his reflection shimmering over the city lights. Then we find her. Amara's voice trembled slightly. That won't be easy. She disappeared off-grid. New identity, new life. But I have one trace. A contact in Geneva who might know where she is. Etienne nodded. Then we leave tonight. Amara hesitated. If we move, they'll track us. Let them, Etienne said. I would rather die running toward truth than live hiding from it. Before Amara could respond, her tablet buzzed again. Another encrypted ping, same anonymous sender as before. But this time there was an attached file. She hesitated, then opened it. A video feed filled the screen. Surveillance footage from William Tower. James William sitting in his office, blood on his collar, hands shaking as he spoke to someone off camera. I did what you asked. He didn't sign. It's over, a distorted voice replied, cold and emotionless. You failed us. There are consequences for that, James flinched. I can fix it. I can get the files back. The voice paused. Too late, Mr. William. A gunshot echoed through the speakers. The video cut off. Amara froze. Etienne stared, expression hollow. They killed him, she whispered. Etienne's jaw clenched. Then they will come for us next. He walked to the cabinet, pulling open a hidden drawer. Inside, a pistol gleamed beside a stack of passports. You were right, Amara. This is war. She looked at the weapon, then back at him. Sir, if we run, we lose control. If we fight smart, we expose them. William's death is proof of their reach. But it's also their mistake. Etienne frowned. How so? They acted too fast. If we leak this footage strategically, not to the media but to the right financial regulators, it could spark an internal investigation. Arcton thrives in shadows. Drag them into light and they crumble. Etienne's expression softened slightly. You think your mother can help us do that? She'll know how, Amara said. If she's still alive. Etienne glanced toward the city below. Then we go to Geneva. Amara nodded, closing her tablet. I'll make the arrangements. But as she turned away, Etienne caught something in her eyes. A flicker of emotion. Guilt, perhaps. Amara, he said quietly, what else aren't you telling me? She froze. Sir? He stepped closer. When you said your mother investigated Arcton, how deep was her involvement? Amara's throat tightened. She wasn't just an investigator. She was part of them once. Etienne stared at her, stunned. She worked for Arcton 20 years ago, Amara continued, her voice trembling now, before she saw what they were doing. She tried to expose them, and they turned on her. That's why she vanished. Etienne's mind reeled. So this isn't coincidence. This is destiny. Amara met his gaze. Maybe, but I'm not my mother. And I'm not running this time. Etienne placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we finish what she started. Outside, the night had fallen, the city lights burning like a constellation of silent witnesses. Far below on the street, the same black SUV idled in the shadows. Inside, a man in a gray suit spoke into his earpiece. They're preparing to move, he said. Orders? A voice crackled back, smooth and emotionless. Let them. Geneva will take care of the rest. The man smiled faintly, watching the tower. Because for Arcton, the hunt had just begun. Etienne's hand trembled slightly as he stood before the vast glass window of the boardroom. The city below was alive, glowing rivers of light winding through the streets. His reflection on the glass looked like a stranger, a man who had built empires now standing on the edge of one collapsing. Behind him, the table that had once symbolized triumph was now littered with scattered documents, torn contracts and silent witnesses to betrayal. James William sat slouched in the chair, his tie loosened, arrogance replaced by raw panic. His legal team had retreated into the hallway minutes ago, whispering frantically on phones, trying to stop what was already unstoppable. Amara stood at the far end of the room, calm, almost regal, watching Etienne. Her expression held neither triumph nor pity, just truth. Etienne turned. You knew, he said quietly. Amara nodded once. I did. He walked toward her, the soles of his Italian shoes echoing against the polished marble. And yet you worked beside me, traveled with me, smiled at my jokes. All this time you were watching me? Her eyes softened. No, Mr. Moreau, I wasn't watching you. I was protecting my father's name. Etienne stopped. Your father? Amara took a breath, steady and deliberate. You knew him, or rather your company did. His name was Isaiah Blake. 10 years ago, he worked for William Industries as a lead developer on a new energy prototype. They accused him of stealing data, destroyed his reputation, and when he tried to defend himself, they buried him. He died before the case even reached court. Etienne's face went pale. Isaiah Blake. He searched his memory. The name was faint, but not unfamiliar. One among hundreds in the corporate storms of a decade past. Amara continued, her voice low but unwavering. The documents I showed you, the ones William tried to hide, they weren't just proof of fraud. They contained the same prototype data my father designed. William stole it from him, rebranded it, and built this deal around it. You weren't about to invest in innovation, Etienne. You were about to buy stolen legacy. My father's legacy. James Williams slammed his hand against the table. That's a lie. You have no right to— Enough! Etienne snapped, his accent slicing through the room. You lied to me, William. You forged reports, falsified patents, and you dared to put my signature beneath your theft. William rose to his feet, his voice rising. You think anyone will believe her? She's just an assistant. Etienne's eyes burned. She's the only one who told me the truth. The silence that followed was heavy. The wind outside pressed against the glass, whispering like judgment. William straightened, his voice cold now. You think you can just walk away, Etienne? You've already gone public with this partnership. The markets expect it. You back out now, you lose billions in stock value. You'll be finished by morning. Etienne stepped closer, his tone low and dangerous. Then let me be finished with honor rather than wealth. He turned to Amara. Prepare a statement. We're withdrawing from the deal. Immediately. William laughed bitterly. You'll regret this. You have no idea what you're walking into. Etienne didn't reply. He simply looked at him, long enough to make William falter, then pressed the intercom. Security. Please escort Mr. William and his team out of the building. As the doors opened, William's mask cracked completely. You'll fall with me, Etienne. You always do when you listen to the wrong people. Etienne's reply was quiet but final. No, William, this time, I listened to the right one. When the doors closed behind William, Etienne exhaled heavily, his composure finally breaking. He looked at Amara, and for the first time he didn't see her as his assistant. He saw her as someone who had just saved him from ruin, and from himself. Why didn't you tell me sooner? He asked. She hesitated. Because I didn't trust you either. At first I thought you were just another William, rich man who'd trade anyone for power. But then I watched you. I saw how you treated people. I saw how you questioned the reports that didn't make sense. And when you said you trusted me with your father's foundation accounts? She paused. I realized you were different. Etienne rubbed his temples. I should have seen it. The signs, the inconsistencies. You saw what he wanted you to see, she said gently. That's how traps are built. They look like opportunities until you're inside. Etienne almost smiled at that. You have a way with words, Amara. I had to learn, she replied. No one listens to silence in rooms like this. They both turned toward the night view. The skyline flickered, a storm brewing far beyond the glass. Etienne spoke again softly. What will you do now? Amara's gaze stayed on the city. I'm going to rebuild what my father started. The clean energy tech he designed could change the world. But I need resources, a network, someone who believes it can be done right this time. Etienne's voice deepened. Then you will have both. My investment, but on your terms. She looked at him surprised. You mean it? I owe you more than gratitude, he said. You saved me from signing my soul to a thief. You gave me back my name. Amara studied him for a moment. The sincerity in his eyes, the humility that hadn't been there when the day began. Then she nodded slowly. Then I accept. But not as your assistant. Etienne's lips curved into a faint smile. No, as my partner. They shook hands, not the formal grip of contract signers, but something deeper, human. In that moment, the power shifted completely. The deal that had started as a $100 million corporate alliance had transformed into something far greater: redemption, justice, and renewal. The next morning, headlines exploded across global news networks. Etienne Moreau withdraws $100 million deal after fraud scandal. CEO James William under investigation. In the accompanying photo, Etienne stood beside Amara at a press conference. Cameras flashed, voices shouted, but she remained composed, her eyes sharp, her words precise as she explained the truth. Not with vengeance, but with conviction. Later, as they rode together in silence to the airport, Etienne turned to her. Do you ever think your father would forgive me for being part of that world? Amara smiled faintly. He wouldn't blame you for being fooled, only for staying silent after you knew. Etienne nodded. Then I will not stay silent. As their jet rose into the clouds, Amara glanced out the window. The skyline of New York grew smaller, and with it, the shadow of everything that had nearly destroyed them. She reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph, her father, standing beside a prototype machine, smiling with hope in his eyes. She whispered under her breath, "We did it, Dad." Etienne glanced her way, hearing the faint words but saying nothing. For once, the silence between them wasn't corporate or strategic. It was peace. Down below, William's empire began to crumble under the weight of truth. Investigations opened, investors fled, and for the first time, his name carried not power, but disgrace. And in a quiet office overlooking Paris 2 weeks later, Amara stood beside Etienne again, this time as an equal. On the table before them lay a new contract, but she was the one holding the pen. Etienne smiled. No traps this time? She met his gaze with a small grin. No traps, just beginnings. And as she signed her name, the story that began with betrayal ended with rebirth, a $100 million deal that was never meant to be, replaced by something far rarer, trust built from truth.